Autumn in Boston brings a sudden chill to the air. Especially in the evening, when Olivia Montgomery was returning home from her office, the red leaves on the street trees swayed in the wind, and cold rain struck her cheeks. Looking out the window of her financial firm on the 35th floor of a skyscraper, she felt the fatigue of another day of prolonged meetings. Her reputation as an accountant was excellent, and her clients trusted her deeply. That was her only consolation. "Olivia, that was a wonderful proposal," her colleague Sarah said with a smile. Olivia answered while gathering her documents and putting them in her bag. "Thank you. But that's it for today's work. I need to get home now." "Oh, right. Today is the Montgomery family dinner, isn't it?" At Sarah's words, Olivia let out a small sigh. The Montgomery family. Even after 8 years of marriage, she still didn't feel accepted as a member of that family. She got into a taxi and headed toward her home in an upscale residential area. 8 years ago, when she met Richard, he was a kind and thoughtful man. They married after a brief courtship, but after the wedding, his attitude gradually changed. When she arrived home, Richard wasn't back yet. It was typical. His family's real estate company always had important matters to handle, and he often returned home late at night. Olivia took a shower and began preparing dinner. In the refrigerator was a casserole she had made yesterday. She warmed it in the microwave while checking her cell phone. There were no messages from Richard. The sound of the front door opening announced Richard's return. In the past, he would have hugged Olivia when he got home and said, "You worked hard today." But now, he just passed through the living room and gave Olivia a cold greeting. "I'm late. Is there anything to eat?" Olivia answered with a smile. "Yes, I warmed up the casserole. And I made a salad too." Richard sat down at the table silently and began checking his phone.
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
Olivia tried to make conversation while serving the food. "How was work today?" "The usual. There was some trouble with the Bixby Tower project, but we managed to resolve it," Richard answered without taking his eyes off his phone. "I see, that's good," Olivia said as she served food onto her plate. "By the way, about your sister's engagement party this weekend, is there anything I should bring?" Richard looked up for the first time. "Mom has arranged everything, so you don't need to bring anything. More importantly, Dad is bringing an important client after the party, so please try not to disrupt things." Olivia paused momentarily with her chopsticks but quickly composed herself. "Disrupt? What do you mean?" "I'm talking about the usual. Don't say strange things in front of my mother and family." "Strange things?" Olivia frowned. "When have I ever said anything strange?" Richard pushed his plate away and stood up. "Last Sunday, when Dad was talking about his investments, you started discussing tax laws. That made Dad uncomfortable. Can you please refrain from such professional talk in front of my family?" Olivia was speechless. She had only been trying to join the conversation. Moreover, as an accounting expert, she had just been providing accurate information. "Richard, I was just..." "That's enough," Richard waved his hand. "I'm tired. I'm going to check some papers in my study. Please clean up." Olivia was left alone, staring at her half-eaten dinner. Outside the window, the rain grew stronger, and the sound of it hitting the glass echoed through the room. This wasn't the married life she had dreamed of 8 years ago. Her cell phone rang, and the screen showed it was from her mother-in-law, Eleanor. Olivia took a deep breath before answering. "Good evening, Eleanor." "Olivia, I need to talk to you about Vanessa's engagement party." Eleanor's voice was always haughty and condescending toward Olivia. "What are you planning to wear?" "I'd prefer you avoid anything too flashy. This is Vanessa's special day." Olivia closed her eyes and kept her composure. "Of course, Eleanor. I'll wear a subdued dress. And your parents won't be coming, right? There was obvious relief in Eleanor's voice. Olivia's parents were middle-class teachers who had passed away 2 years ago. Their existence had always been treated as embarrassing by the Montgomery family. No, they won't be coming, Olivia answered matter-of-factly. Good. Then I'll see you on Saturday. I've asked Richard to drive. After hanging up, Olivia sank into the sofa, looking exhausted. When had her once love-filled marriage become so cold? She gazed at the rain outside the window, wondering what direction her life would take from here. The morning of the wedding day dawned with a rare clear blue sky over Boston. Olivia had risen early and was carefully applying her makeup. She sat at her dressing table, staring at her reflection in the mirror. There were faint signs of fatigue under her eyes. Over the past few weeks, she had tried several times to talk with Richard about improving their relationship, but he always ended the conversation with, "I'm busy right now." "If you don't hurry up, we'll be late," Richard's voice echoed in the bedroom. He was already dressed in a new dark blue Armani suit. The high-quality fabric with emphasized shoulders seemed to flaunt his social status. Olivia looked at him in the mirror, trying to recall the love she once felt for him. "I'll be ready soon," Olivia answered, picking up a lilac-colored dress she had chosen from her wardrobe. It was a simple and elegant design, but she knew Eleanor probably wouldn't like the color. Still, she wanted to maintain at least some of her own identity. Richard glanced at her chosen dress and frowned. "You're wearing that to the ceremony. Is there a problem?" "No, that's fine," he said, but his voice clearly conveyed his dissatisfaction. "It's just that Mom thought blue or green would be better." Olivia took a quiet deep breath. "This is the dress I've chosen, Richard. And I'd appreciate it if your mother would stop dictating my wardrobe." Richard checked his watch, changing the subject. "Just hurry up. We're leaving at 10. By the time Olivia had finished dressing, Richard was already pacing restlessly downstairs. When she came down to the living room, Richard was looking at his phone instead of looking at her. "I'm ready." Richard looked up and saw her. For a moment, something seemed to flicker in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. "Finally. Let's go." As they got into Richard's luxury sedan, tension filled the car. He began driving in silence, and Olivia turned her gaze to the scenery outside. The Boston cityscape passed by, and soon they entered the upscale Back Bay district. The Lingham Hotel was a historic building often used by the Montgomery family, and Vanessa's wedding ceremony was scheduled to take place in the grand ballroom on the top floor. "Richard," Olivia broke the silence. "Today could be a good opportunity to reset our relationship. It would be nice if we could enjoy some time together for a change." Richard was looking at his phone and didn't seem to be listening to half of what she said. He typed a message, sent it, and then responded. "Today is an important day for the family. Just don't think about unnecessary things and follow my instructions." Olivia nodded, feeling a pain in her chest. "I understand. But can't we at least enjoy your sister's wedding together?" Richard gripped the steering wheel tightly. "Olivia, today is a special day. Just..." He broke off and pretended to concentrate on the road. "Anyway, just follow my instructions when we get to the venue." Olivia no longer understood her husband. Where had the caring man gone? She was mentally recalling Richard's suspicious behavior lately. Frequent business trips, late returns home, and the way he never let go of his cell phone. She had been trying not to consider the worst possibility, but perhaps it was time to face reality. When the car stopped in front of the Lingham Hotel, a valet parking attendant came running up. Richard got out of the car and handed the keys to the valet. As Olivia was about to exit the car, Richard suddenly grabbed her arm. "Olivia, could you wait in the car for a bit?" She looked at her husband in surprise. "What are you saying?" "This is a wedding I was invited to." Richard looked around and spoke in a low voice. Of course. I just thought I'd greet Mom and Vanessa first, and then call you. Olivia was hurt by his excuse but wanted to avoid an argument in public. Richard, I am your wife. I've put up with everything for 8 years. But today, at least, I want to be treated like family. Richard was clearly flustered, but perhaps sensing her determination, he reluctantly nodded. All right. Let's go together. Entering the luxurious hotel lobby, it was filled with people busy preparing for the wedding. The elegant space was further beautified by elaborate floral decorations and white ribbons. Olivia was admiring the beauty when suddenly Eleanor and Vanessa came into her view. Vanessa was dressed in a pre-wedding dress, standing alongside her mother. The two smiled when they saw Richard, but when they noticed Olivia, their expressions clouded. Eleanor was dressed in what looked like an expensive silk dress, with a necklace of large pearls around her neck. Her hair was perfectly styled, and she looked like a queen of high society. Richard, you've finally arrived, Eleanor approached her son and kissed both his cheeks. Ignoring Olivia, she continued, everyone's waiting. Vanessa's makeup artist will arrive soon, and the time for the photo shoot is set. Vanessa hugged Richard and called out in a sweet voice, Big brother. She finally turned to Olivia and gave her a cold smile. Oh, Olivia came too. Richard whispered something to his mother, and Eleanor frowned as she looked at Olivia. I told you she would come, Richard's whisper was audible. Olivia maintained her smile, feeling everyone's gaze. Good morning, Eleanor. Lovely dress. Vanessa, you look beautiful today. Eleanor snorted, and Vanessa returned a perfunctory smile. Richard was clearly uncomfortable. Let's check in, Eleanor said, leading the group. Olivia followed behind Richard, feeling deeply anxious. The hallway leading to the grand ballroom of the Lingham Hotel was decorated with white orchids and soft satin ribbons. Olivia admired the beauty while feeling anxiety spreading within her. Eleanor and Vanessa walked ahead, with Richard standing between them. They occasionally whispered something and laughed together. Olivia, following a few steps behind, symbolized her position in the family for the past 8 years. In the luxurious reception area, there was a long table decorated with large white floral arrangements, where 2 young women were checking the guest list. They wore elegant gray suits with small brooches bearing the initials of Vanessa and her fiancé Jason on their chests. Eleanor led the way to the reception. Montgomery, she said in a haughty tone. I am the mother, Eleanor Montgomery, this is the bride Vanessa, and her brother Richard. One of the staff smiled and confirmed the name, saying, Yes, Montgomery family, we've been expecting you. She marked the guest list and handed over the seating chart. Olivia stepped forward and stood beside Richard. The receptionist looked up at her and asked with a gentle smile, May I have your name, please? Before Olivia could open her mouth, Richard intervened. Her, he said with a contemptuous smile. Oh, she's just the driver. The moment those words echoed through the air, Olivia's heart nearly stopped. She couldn't believe her ears. The driver? She had been this man's wife for 8 years. How many family events had she been pushed aside for? How much humiliation had she swallowed? But this time, it exceeded everything before. Richard, what are you? Olivia's words were cut off. The receptionist looked confused and checked the guest list again. I'm sorry, but the driver's name isn't on the list. Eleanor and Vanessa exchanged meaningful glances and smiled triumphantly. Olivia stood frozen in place. Her name wasn't even on the invitation list. After 8 years of marriage, all the patience and effort, and yet she was treated as just a driver at her husband's sister's wedding. Richard, what is this about? Olivia asked in a trembling voice. Tears were already forming in her eyes, but she was desperately holding them back. I am your wife. Why isn't my name on the list? Richard looked around, clearly uncomfortable. He tried to answer, but Eleanor stepped in. Richard, You're needed as Vanessa's escort. It's almost time for the photo shoot, she said in a commanding tone. Vanessa, dear, come. The makeup artist is waiting. Richard gave Olivia only a glance before moving to follow his mother and sister. Olivia grabbed his arm. Richard, you're going to leave like this? Without an explanation. He shook off her arm. Later. This is family time now. Family. That word pierced Olivia's heart. After 8 years, she was still not family. As Richard walked away with his mother and sister, Olivia was left behind. The reception staff, clearly uncomfortable, began attending to other guests. Olivia stood there, not knowing what to do. At that moment, Eleanor came back. She gave some instructions to the staff and approached Olivia. There was a cruel light in her eyes. Olivia, dear, Eleanor called out in a sugary voice, but her eyes were as cold as ice. She leaned close to Olivia's ear and whispered, "Did you think you'd be let in? How stupid." Olivia shivered. Eleanor's words were poisonous. "As if we would invite someone like you to the family's special day," Eleanor continued. "You're just a temporary presence. I thought Richard would have realized that by now, but it's taking longer than expected." Something broke in Olivia's heart. And at the same time, something else was born. A quiet anger and determination welled up from within her. All the past humiliations, the neglect, and today's final insult. Everything crystallized within her and became a clear intention. Eleanor was about to walk away with a triumphant expression, but Olivia grabbed her arm. "Wait, Eleanor." Eleanor turned around, surprised. Olivia had never shown such a strong attitude before. Olivia opened her handbag and took out a quality envelope. On the cream-colored envelope, Vanessa and Jason's names were written in beautiful calligraphy. Olivia took a deep breath and, holding back tears, smiled gently. "Then, please give them this, as a wedding gift." Eleanor stared at the envelope with a puzzled expression. "What is this?" "A wedding gift," Olivia answered. Her voice was trembling, but there was a light of determination in her eyes. "It's a special gift. Please make sure to give it to Vanessa and Jason." Eleanor reluctantly took the envelope. "Of course I'll give it to them. But you should leave now. There's no place for you here." Olivia nodded quietly, saying, "That's right. There was no place for me here. But that's going to change from now on." Eleanor couldn't understand the meaning of her words and stared suspiciously at the envelope. Olivia adjusted her bag on her shoulder and turned elegantly. As she turned her back to Eleanor, she left with a final message. "I hope it's a lovely ceremony, Eleanor. I hope it's a day you'll never forget." Olivia left the reception area with dignified steps. Her back was straight, and her walk had a confidence she had never shown before. Richard peeked out from around the corner of the hallway and stared at her, but she didn't even glance at him. Having carried the humiliation and pain of 8 years, Olivia's heart now knew no fear. A new strength had been born within her. She stepped into the hotel elevator and pressed the button. Just as the doors were closing, she saw Richard rushing down the hallway toward her. But it was too late. The doors closed, and the elevator began its descent. Olivia gazed at her reflection in the elevator mirror. There were traces of tears on her face, but her eyes shone with determination. She took a deep breath and smiled slightly. "This is the end, Richard," she whispered. "But for you all, it's just the beginning." When the elevator arrived at the lobby floor, Olivia walked calmly to the hotel bar. She sat at the bar counter and ordered a martini. Taking a sip, she pulled out her cell phone. The screen displayed the contact information of a lawyer she had been hesitating to call. Now, her mind was made up. She would not turn back. As her finger tapped the phone number, her heart was surprisingly calm. Upstairs, Eleanor would probably be opening the envelope by now. That special gift would shake the entire Montgomery family. Olivia raised her glass and toasted herself. In the grand ballroom, wedding preparations were steadily progressing. Vanessa was having her final makeup done in a dedicated bridal suite, and Richard was with her fiancé Jason, greeting guests. Eleanor was making a final check of the venue decorations, occasionally glancing suspiciously at the cream-colored envelope in her hand. "What are you looking at, Mom?" Vanessa asked, coming out of the suite. She was dressed in a luxurious wedding gown, with a small diamond tiara sparkling in her hair. "Oh, you look lovely," Eleanor admired her daughter's appearance before holding up the envelope. "This is a present from Olivia, apparently." "Olivia?" Vanessa frowned. "Where did she go?" "She left, of course," Eleanor said triumphantly. "But she left some gift. Let's open it." Eleanor opened the envelope and took out the contents. The first thing she saw was a small card. She read it aloud. "To Vanessa and Jason. For the beginning of your new life, a gift of truth. From Olivia." A gift of truth. Vanessa furrowed her brow. "What does that mean?" Eleanor took out the rest of the contents from the envelope. They were several photographs and a bundle of documents. When she looked at the photos, her face suddenly turned pale. "What is it, Mom?" Vanessa asked, noticing her mother's distress. Eleanor was at a loss for words, and her hand holding the photos was trembling. The photos showed Richard and a young woman in an intimate setting. That woman was. "This is Caroline," Vanessa said in a thin voice. Her face drained of color. "Jason's sister." There wasn't just one photo. Photo after photo showed Richard and Caroline entering a luxury hotel, dining at a restaurant, and several captured intimate moments between them. They were dated, with the oldest being from over a year ago. "Since when?" Eleanor said in a trembling voice. "Richard, since when have you been?" But that was just the beginning. The envelope contained other documents as well. Divorce papers signed by Olivia, materials about a company she owned called Innovative Living, and most shockingly, internal documents showing that the Montgomery family real estate company had been in financial trouble for months. They were analyzed with Olivia's expertise as an accountant, detailing how Richard and the Montgomery family had been maintaining the company through window dressing settlements. "This is..." Eleanor's face was contorted with fear. "This is a lie. A fabrication." But her eyes were surprised at the detail and accuracy of the documents. Olivia had access to the Montgomery family's financial situation. And as an accountant, she had seen through all the fraud. "Mom, what's wrong? What happened?" Vanessa was increasingly confused. At that moment, Jason approached. "Vanessa, the ceremony is about to begin," he looked lovingly at his fiancée before noticing the photos in Eleanor's hand. "What are those?" Eleanor tried to hide the photos hurriedly, but it was too late. Jason saw one of the photos and his face froze. "Is this Caroline?" He took the photo in his hand, disbelieving. "With Richard?" "Jason, this is..." Vanessa was at a loss for words. Jason looked through the photos one after another, and his expression twisted with anger. "Since when?" His voice was low and had a dangerous resonance. "Since when has this been going on?" Eleanor looked around for her son. "Richard," she called desperately. Richard heard his mother's voice and hurried over. "What happened?" "The ceremony is about to start." Jason thrust the photos in front of Richard's face with a trembling hand. "Explain this." The blood drained from Richard's face. He looked at the photos, then at the bundle of documents in Eleanor's hand. Where did you get these?" "From Olivia," Jason said through gritted teeth. "From your wife." "Olivia?" Richard was stunned. "She did this. But how? What does it matter?" Jason raised his voice. You and my sister. He broke off and took a deep breath. Then suddenly, he drove his fist into Richard's jaw. Richard stumbled backward from the impact and fell into a chair. Guests turned in surprise, and the venue fell silent. The wedding is off, Jason said coldly. He turned on his heel and left the venue. Vanessa collapsed in tears, crying, "Jason, wait," as she chased after him. The sound of her luxurious wedding dress dragging across the floor echoed strangely in the silence. Amid the confusion, Eleanor was examining the bundle of documents further. Her face grew even paler. Richard, is it true about the company? Are we really on the verge of bankruptcy? Richard stood up, wiping blood from his lip. That can't be. But his eyes were filled with anxiety. He took his cell phone out of his pocket and began calling Olivia. In the hotel lobby, guests were talking to each other in confusion. Apparently the ceremony has been cancelled. What happened? Is there some problem with the Montgomery family? Rumors spread quickly. Eleanor clutched her expensive pearl necklace with trembling hands. She was going through the divorce papers. They detailed the division of shared property between Richard and Olivia. Olivia was demanding half of the profits from the Montgomery family's real estate company. And she had legal grounds to do so. She knew everything. Eleanor murmured. Everything. Richard was desperately trying to call Olivia's cell phone, but there was no response. His face was distorted with fear and anger. Where is that woman? He shouted. The venue had fallen into complete chaos. The high-end champagne tower had collapsed, and the wedding cake was left uncut. Vanessa's crying could be heard from the hotel hallway. Meanwhile, Eleanor was reading a line written on the last page of the divorce papers. True family consists of people who respect you as an individual. This is my gift of truth. Richard returned to his mother. What should we do? His voice trembled with fear. She knew everything. About the company, about Caroline, everything. Eleanor looked at her son. Her eyes mixed anger and fear. You brought this disaster upon us. The perfect world of the Montgomery family was about to collapse. Cheers. Glasses clinked together, creating a pleasant sound in the private room of the upscale restaurant. Olivia raised her champagne glass and smiled at her friends around her. Her face showed a confidence and tranquility that hadn't been seen before. To Olivia Freeman's new journey, her close friend Sarah said. And to the wonderful future of Freeman Financial Consulting. A year had passed since then. On the day she left the chaotic wedding, Olivia went straight from the hotel to her lawyer's office. She had already made preparations. Evidence of Richard's infidelity, detailed analysis of the company's financial situation, and plans for the consulting company she had secretly been establishing. The divorce was settled surprisingly quickly. Richard and his family had no choice. The evidence Olivia had obtained meant that if they contested in court, it would bring further disgrace. Moreover, the financial state of the Montgomery family's real estate company was worse than she had indicated, and they were desperate to protect any assets they could. Did you hear? Sarah whispered from across the table. Richard is apparently working at a used car dealership in Manhattan. I heard his company finally went bankrupt. Is that so? Olivia shrugged. I don't care about him anymore. It was true. In the first few weeks, there were sleepless nights filled with anger and hurt, but as time passed, she began to focus on her new life. With the assets gained from the divorce, she formally established Freeman Financial Consulting. Her approach of particularly supporting women entrepreneurs was highly valued by clients. And Eleanor, another friend asked. Apparently she's retreated to a relative's home in New Hampshire, Sarah answered. She's been completely ostracized from Boston's high society. And Vanessa? I heard she moved to Los Angeles, Olivia said. Trying to make a fresh start, I suppose. She gazed at the Boston night view spreading outside the window. This city, which had once oppressed her, had now become the stage of her success. She was no longer someone's appendage but was living her own life. "I wonder what real family is," Olivia said quietly. "It's not blood ties. It's not money. It's people who respect you as an individual. I think that's what true family is." The friends around the table nodded in agreement. They were all people who had supported Olivia during her difficult times. "Now then," Olivia raised her glass again. "A toast to the future. To all our futures." Outside the window, spring stars were beginning to shine. A new season, a new beginning. Olivia smiled. There were no more tears in her eyes.